You don't say this out loud unless you mean it. Caitlin Clark didn't just show up on the New Heights podcast to talk about rehab, injuries, or getting back in rhythm. She showed up with a message, and if you were actually listening, it was loud and clear. Caitlin Clark wants the Olympics. Not someday, not hypothetically, not in a we'll see how it plays out kind of way. She wants Team USA, she wants the World Cup, and she wants to be at the center of the next era of women's basketball. And that matters, because just a year ago, she was left off the 2024 Olympic roster.
Well, we are going to talk more about that interview, that guest appearance Caitlin Clark had on the New Heights podcast with Travis Kelce, Jason Kelce, of course, from the NFL. Jason played for the Eagles. Travis played for the Chiefs because I think he is done. Don't worry, I won't put the football intro on this video. Is what it is, folks. The other channel, the football channel right now.
And the basketball world exploded. Media debates, fan outrage, quiet resentment from the old guard, and a rookie who said very little but clearly didn't forget. Now fast forward to today. Clark is healthy, Clark is confident, and Clark is no longer dancing around the conversation. On New Heights, she calmly walks through something most fans didn't even realize was coming. The WNBA season will pause for the FIBA World Cup, just like it does for the Olympics, before restarting for the playoffs. Think about that.
Basketball court, a little bit.
Let's get into it.
So back on the court, Team USA practice. How you feeling?
It was fun, obviously, to get back out there. It had been a minute, so it was just obviously a long and tough year of reoccurring injuries, and you guys know how that goes. When you get one nagging thing, it kind of leads to another. So it wasn't obviously how I envisioned it, and it stunk. But we still kind of found a way. Our team, we had 6 of our players go down with injuries. It was unreal, and we still had a great year. Made it to the semifinals, and we were a game away from the finals. And
the league is literally stopping its season for international play, and Caitlin Clark is already positioning herself for that moment. She talks about injuries, groins, quads, the grind of relearning how to run, but there's no hesitation in her voice, no doubt, no softness. She goes from rehab straight back into practice with the best players in the world, thrown back into the fire, and she loved it. That's not just confidence, that's belief. Belief that she belongs. Belief that she's right where she was before the injuries.
It was a long process to just get back on the court, because when you have the groins and the quads and whatever you're dealing with, it's you don't run for a while, so it's weird learning to run again in a way. And then on top of that, going to play versus the best players again, and just getting tossed out back into the fire. But it was fun. I probably wouldn't have wanted it any other way. You get thrown back out there with the best players in the world, and you see you're right where you were before you got hurt. And it was only 3 days, so it was cool. And it was at Duke, which is obviously one of the most historic basketball places ever. So that was
belief that 2028 isn't far away. It's coming fast. So the question isn't if Caitlin Clark wants the Olympics. The real question is USA basketball ready for Caitlin Clark? Because this time, she's not asking. You're watching Her Hoops. If you care about where the WNBA is headed and who's really driving it, hit like, subscribe, and stay locked in. To understand why this moment matters, you have to rewind the tape, because Caitlin Clark didn't just appear in the WNBA spotlight, she dragged it with her.
And obviously she was left off of it in 2024. So many of us, obviously, when that happened, that became a story in itself. It got very loud. By the way, there's more stuff in this, so go check out that podcast. But, they're talking later on, it's either before this or after this, about a different basketball player that had a lot of success in 3-on-3. She made it pretty clear in this.
College basketball had already crowned her before she ever played a professional minute. Record-breaking nights, logo threes, sold-out arenas, television ratings that forced networks to pay attention whether they wanted to or not. And when she declared for the draft, the conversation wasn't if she'd changed the league, it was how fast. But then, reality hit. The WNBA season didn't roll out a red carpet. It rolled out pressure, physicality, a pace she'd never experienced before.
I don't know, far as we know they're in negotiations right now for a new CBA. Part of that's going to be obviously they're looking to maximize television ratings. That means the WNBA's got to be involved even longer with competing against college football in the National Football League, which is probably going to hurt those ratings a good bit, I would guess. But she's 100% healthy. She made that clear at USA
And injuries that stacked up one after another. Groin issues, quad problems. The kind of nagging setbacks that don't make headlines, but slowly chip away at rhythm and confidence. And through all of that, one thing stayed in the background. Team USA. In 2024, Caitlin Clark was left off the Olympic roster. Officially, it was about experience, about chemistry, about timing. Unofficially, it was a line in the sand between generations. Fans didn't buy it. Social media didn't buy it. And whether USA Basketball wants to admit it or not, that decision became bigger than basketball. It turned into a debate about gatekeeping, about marketing versus merit, about whether women's basketball was ready to fully embrace the player who was bringing in a brand new audience. Clark didn't go public. She didn't complain. She didn't throw shade. She just went back to work. Now here we are. A new cycle, a new conversation, and a very different tone. On the New Heights podcast, Clark isn't talking like someone hoping to sneak onto a roster. She's talking like someone planning her timeline. World Cup in 2026, Olympics in 2028, WNBA season paused, playoffs resumed. That's not dreaming, that's preparation. And when she says the World Cup can actually be harder to win than the Olympics, that's a player who understands the global game and wants to be tested by it. This isn't about hype anymore. This is about positioning. Caitlin Clark isn't chasing validation, she's chasing responsibility, and that changes everything. Let's slow this down and actually break apart what Caitlin Clark said, because every piece of it matters. First, the injuries. She didn't sugarcoat it. She called it a long, frustrating year of recurring problems. And that's important because this wasn't one freak incident. It was a chain reaction. One nagging issue leading to another. Groins, quads, soft tissue stuff that messes with your mechanics, your confidence, and your timing. And here's the key part. She didn't talk about pain. She talked about relearning how to run. That tells you how deep it went. When you can't run, you can't create space. When you can't create space, you can't be Caitlin Clark. So when she says she walked back onto the court and immediately faced the best players in the world, that's not just a comeback story, that's a stress test. And by her own words, she passed it. Second, the setting. Duke. One of the most historic basketball environments on the planet. No warm-up tour, no easing in, straight into elite-level competition. And she didn't describe it as overwhelming, she described it as fun. That matters. Because elite players don't fear pressure, they crave confirmation. Third, the timeline. This is where fans really need to pay attention. The WNBA will pause for the FIBA World Cup at the end of September, just like it does for the Olympics, and then return for the playoffs. That's massive. It means international play is no longer an inconvenience, it's a priority. And Caitlin Clark already sees herself in that picture. She openly says she hopes she's on the World Cup team. She openly says her goal is the 2028 Olympic roster. And she openly acknowledges that it's closer than it sounds. Finally, the subtext. She also shut the door on 3x3 basketball. No hesitation, no PR spin. She said it doesn't fit her game. That tells you everything about how she sees herself, as a 5-on-5 floor general, not a novelty act. This isn't someone chasing exposure, this is someone chasing legacy. Here's where the conversation gets uncomfortable. Because Caitlin Clark's rise exposes contradictions the WNBA and USA Basketball haven't fully reckoned with yet. On one hand, the league desperately wants growth. More viewers, more TV money, more relevance, more cultural pull. On the other hand, it's still cautious about who gets to be the face of that growth. Let's be honest. When Caitlin Clark was left off the 2024 Olympic team, the explanation was experience. But experience has never stopped USA Basketball before when the upside was undeniable. Men's teams have fast-tracked stars for decades. So have women's teams, when it suited them. So why was this different? Because Clark isn't just another great player. She's a shift. She brings new fans, new expectations, and a spotlight that doesn't always follow the traditional script. And now the tension is back. The WNBA is willing to pause its entire season for international play, a huge structural commitment. Media partners are extending coverage deeper into football season. Negotiations around the CBA are happening under the pressure of expanding audiences and higher stakes. And right in the middle of all that is Caitlin Clark. Healthy, visible, confident. Appearing on the biggest sports podcast in the country, pulling tens of thousands of views in hours, not days. This isn't accidental. USA Basketball now has a dilemma. If Clark performs at the World Cup level, if she proves she can thrive against international physicality and defensive schemes, what justification remains to keep her out of the Olympic core? And if they don't include her? That decision won't be quiet this time. Because Clark isn't just talking to basketball insiders anymore. She's talking to the fans, the casual viewers, the people who followed her from college and stayed. She also slipped in something else, her stance on compromise in the CBA talks. She didn't posture. She didn't threaten. She said the fans want to see basketball played. That's not a radical statement, but in a league staring down potential labor tension, it's revealing. Caitlin Clark isn't positioning herself as a disruptor. She's positioning herself as a stabilizer. And sometimes, that's even more threatening. This is the part of the conversation that separates hype from substance. Because Caitlin Clark's value isn't just about logo threes or highlight reels. It's about how her game translates when everything tightens. International basketball is different. The floor feels smaller. The defenses are more physical. The refs let more contact go. And the margin for error disappears fast. That's why her comments about recovery and conditioning matter so much. When she talks about not running for extended periods, that's a nightmare scenario for a movement-based shooter. Her game is built on constant relocation, sprinting off pin downs, changing pace, reading defenders in real time. Lose that, and you lose her edge. But the key detail? She didn't talk about rebuilding her shot. She talked about rebuilding her body. That tells you her foundation is solid. And when she returned, she didn't ask for reps against second units or controlled scrimmages. She went straight at elite competition and came away confident she was still there. That confidence extends to how she sees her role. Clark openly said she won't play 3x3 basketball because it doesn't suit her style. That's not arrogance, that's clarity. Her value comes from vision, spacing, timing, and decision-making over extended possessions. She's a conductor, not a solo act. That's exactly what Team USA has historically needed during tight international games. Someone who can bend defenses without forcing shots. And here's the personal layer. She mentioned Duke, not as a flex, but as fuel. Historic spaces matter to players who see themselves as part of something bigger. That's not coincidence. That's mindset. She's not trying to squeeze into a system. She's preparing to run one. This is also why her approach to the CBA conversation is revealing. She didn't speak like someone insulated from consequences. She spoke like someone aware of the ecosystem: fans, schedules, TV windows, momentum. That's rare. Most young stars focus on themselves. Caitlin Clark is already thinking about infrastructure. That's what makes her dangerous. Zoom out, because this isn't just about Caitlin Clark. This is about where the WNBA is actually headed. For the first time in a long time, the league isn't just reacting to moments, it's restructuring around them. Pausing the season for the World Cup, extending the calendar deeper into the fall, negotiating a new CBA under the pressure of real audience growth. Those aren't symbolic moves, those are bets. And Caitlin Clark is at the center of every one of them. Her presence has forced conversations the league can't avoid anymore, about scheduling, visibility, labor balance, and who drives engagement. When she appears on the biggest sports podcast in America, that's not just exposure for her, that's exposure for the league, whether it likes it or not. And fans are paying attention. They're noticing who gets marketed, who gets protected, and who gets asked to wait their turn. That's why Clark's calm, almost surgical approach matters. She's not demanding special treatment. She's not calling out USA Basketball by name. She's just laying out her goals: World Cup, Olympics, winning, and letting the contrast speak for itself. That puts pressure on decision makers. Because if the league wants to grow globally, it needs stars who translate globally. Players who can play through contact, who can stretch defenses, who can run offense when games slow down and whistles disappear. Caitlin Clark checks those boxes. And culturally, she's bridging a gap. She brings in younger fans, casual fans, and people who didn't grow up watching the WNBA, without alienating those who already love the game. That's rare. Most stars pull in one direction. Clark pulls outward. That's why her voice in CBA discussions matters. That's why her emphasis on fans seeing basketball matters. And that's why her Olympic ambitions matter beyond medals. Because if she becomes a centerpiece of Team USA, it signals a shift toward transparency, accountability, and star power being embraced instead of managed. The league doesn't just need Caitlin Clark, it needs what she represents. Caitlin Clark didn't raise her voice. She didn't fire off a headline quote. She didn't turn the podcast into a controversy. She did something far more powerful. She told the truth, calmly, clearly, and without blinking. She talked about injuries without excuses. She talked about international play without fear. She talked about the Olympics like it was an expectation, not a dream. And that's the difference now. This isn't the Caitlin Clark who was just trying to survive her rookie season. This is a player who understands timelines, cycles, leverage. She knows the World Cup is coming. She knows the WNBA will stop for it. She knows the Olympics are closer than people want to admit. And she knows exactly where she wants to be when those moments arrive. USA Basketball can frame it however they want: development, experience, chemistry. But if Caitlin Clark proves she can dominate internationally, not just score, but control games, the conversation changes permanently. At that point, leaving her off isn't just a basketball decision, it's a statement. And the league is already in a moment where every statement matters. The WNBA is negotiating its future in real time. A new CBA, a longer season, more national exposure, bigger expectations. The margin for misreading the room has never been smaller. Caitlin Clark isn't asking to be handed anything. She's doing the hardest thing instead, making herself unavoidable, healthy, prepared, globally focused, clear about her role, clear about her priorities. She doesn't need to say, "I deserve it." Her play will say it for her. And when the next Team USA roster is announced, whether it's the World Cup or the Olympics, everyone will be watching. Not just to see who made it, but to see who couldn't be ignored anymore. This is Her Hoops, where we don't just watch women's basketball, we break it down. If you enjoyed this deep dive, like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Does Caitlin Clark belong on Team USA's next Olympic roster? Because one thing is clear now, she's ready, and she's coming.